And Congressman Brendan Boyle joins us now. Congressman, let's start with your letter to the CBO. It was back in March, and at the time you asked them to estimate how much a war lasting more than 4 or 5 weeks might cost, and what the estimates might be as well for putting boots on the ground. Now it almost feels quaint to be asking about a war that lasts only 4 or 5 weeks. Have you gotten anywhere with that request?
Well, we're still waiting to hear back from CBO. They obviously have a very difficult job. Part of what makes their job even more difficult is when you have an administration that may not be fully cooperating with them. But you cited earlier the $25 billion figure from Pete Hegseth. That is accurate in terms of the first 2 weeks. It is not even close to the cost right now. Keep in mind, and we know this from other sources, the average daily cost at the very beginning was between $1.5 billion to $2 billion a day. So you just quickly do the math. Literally within 2 weeks, you've already hit the $25 billion figure. So there is no question we are well north of that. I would suspect probably more than double.
It appears once again, from what we've heard from the president this evening, that any hope of a peace plan, a real ceasefire at least remaining in place, maybe falling apart all over again. And Republican Congressman Derek Van Orden, he posted this on X in response to the White House saying that basically Iran's return message on a possible peace plan was not acceptable. Congressman Orden writes, quote, "Start bombing again. It is the only thing they understand." What's your response?
Well, my reaction to not only my congressional colleague from Wisconsin's post, as well as one of several unhinged posts that Donald Trump made today. Interesting way of celebrating Mother's Day, Donald Trump has.
He seems to do that on holidays.
On holidays, too. I won't remind everyone about the Easter post, which was outrageous. But my reaction is the bombing of Iran is not achieving anything. We've actually lost. Of course, we see that every day when we look at gas prices now north of an average of $4.50 a gallon, when they were literally, under $3 a gallon February 28th. Here we are 2.5 months later. We've had more than a 50% increase. But in terms of the Strait of Hormuz, we didn't have to worry about that just 2 months ago. Now we have to worry about it. Now somehow the White House would be claiming success if we got it reopened. So thus far, the only thing this administration is really interested in paying for is more bombs and a ballroom. And you really can't give a damn in the end of the day about the affordability crisis.
Congressman, let me play for you Benjamin Netanyahu. He was on 60 Minutes today. He was asked about the conclusion of the war and whether or not it was going to end. Take a listen to what he said.
Is the war with Iran over? And if it isn't, who will decide when it is?
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material, enriched uranium that has to be taken out of Iran.
How do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran?
You go in and you take it out.
With what? Special forces from Israel? Special forces from the United States?
Well, I'm not going to talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there.
I mean, there's some troubling information in that, in the sense that he's, we don't know if it's true or not, but assuming it's true that he's saying that President Trump is saying he wants to go in there. But also, more importantly, the idea that the only way to get the enriched uranium out means that you're going to have to get boots on the ground, which we were hearing earlier is almost an unimaginable operation that would put American soldiers at great risk, because it wouldn't be a couple of hours, it would be potentially a couple of days or even longer. What do you make of that the war is not over? It's not over until we get the enriched uranium out, and the president has told the Israeli prime minister he wants to go in there.
Well, I'm not very surprised by what Prime Minister Netanyahu just said. Let's not forget, he's been saying this for 30 years. He's been advocating for this war with Iran, and only now did we have a president who was dumb enough to actually listen to him. Also, let's not forget that Netanyahu will be going to the polls in about 4 or 5 months, and he is under enormous pressure in terms of his right-wing coalition to keep this war going as long as possible. So I think for both of those reasons I described, I am not surprised at all that Netanyahu will be pushing as much as possible in order to keep this conflict going.
Do you think he's mischaracterizing his conversations with the president?
I have no idea what the heck those two talk about when I already know how unhinged it is when the cameras are on. in terms of what Donald Trump says. So one can only imagine what he talks about behind scenes. It's probably about 10% on Iran and 90% on the ballroom and the Arch de-Trump that he's attempting to build outside Arlington National Cemetery.
Don't forget the reflecting pool.
I apologize. The big, beautiful blue reflecting pool.
Congressman, I want to talk about the redistricting wars that are happening. Two big legal setbacks for Democrats this week. And the New York Times put it like this, quote, "Put bluntly, Republicans have roughly 10 more House seats that favor them than they did just 10 days ago, and Democrats are suddenly grappling with a new landscape." And so you're quoted in the article, and you say that you anticipated 15 to 20 seats, but now you're lowering that to around 10 to 15 pickup seats. So you still think that Dems will retake the House, but it's just going to be by a smaller margin.
Well, first, the decisions that came through two different courts, first the Supreme Court gutting the remaining parts of the Voting Rights Act, combined with this outrageous decision from the Virginia Supreme Court to allow that public vote to go through in the first place, to have that vote, and then afterwards, when, let's be honest, they just didn't like the result of that election, they decide, oh no, never mind, it didn't count. That is a threat not just in terms of the ramifications for redistricting. That is a threat to democratic legitimacy. So I do want to just say that at the outset. In terms of the raw numbers, though, when it comes to what we're looking to pick up this November, our task just became more difficult. However, I still think, if the election were held today, we probably do win back the House. I said, as you quoted in that article, I think it'd be a pickup of 10 to 15 seats. We need 3 in the end in order to pick up the majority. But that said, this is still going to be a dogfight, and we're dealing with a White House that will pull out all the stops and resort to any and every last trick to deny us a victory.
So, Congressman, before we go, I heard you name-check the ballroom a couple of times. I can tell you are eager to talk about it. Last week, the Republican-controlled Senate Judiciary Committee requested $1 billion in funding for apparently security-related purposes for that ballroom that Trump, of course, said would cost taxpayers nothing. I want to have our viewers watch a little montage about the evolving price tag for this ballroom.
I will build a ballroom free of charge. We'll probably have some donors or whatever, but it's about $200 million. I think it'll cost $250 million. It's going to cost right in the neighborhood of $300 million.
In July, the White House said that it would cost $200 million. Yesterday, the president said $300 million. Is $300 million now the operative figure, and why did it go up by so much?
$300 million is the figure, and again, it's not going to cost the taxpayers a dime.
So what do we actually know about where this money is coming from? How much will be from taxpayers potentially? How much will be from donors? And what the plans look like and what those donors may be getting in exchange, particularly if their donations are being defrayed by the taxpayer.
Yeah, as you pointed out, the ballroom is an especial favorite topic of mine because it drives me nuts. It is, though, the greatest metaphor for this president in terms of what he really cares about. To the rest of the American people who are paying higher gas prices, who are losing their health care, who are paying higher food prices, let them eat cake. I don't care. I'm President Trump, and I apparently have 1 to 2 meetings every single day about this damn stupid ballroom. And now the idea that we, the taxpayers, would have to fork out $1 billion for Trump's vanity project, it is an absolute disgrace. I will say this, though. I predict it actually doesn't pass Congress. Not because my Republican colleagues are going to suddenly grow a backbone and stand up to this president, but I think they recognize it is so deeply unpopular that with their already small majority, I think they will have a very difficult time getting the votes necessary in order to ultimately pass this.
But do you worry that, like, because of the lesson they may have just learned from what happened in Indiana, where don't say no. Right, if you say no to the president, I mean, he's going to come and get you back. And if he is so in love with this ballroom, he would be highly motivated to come get them back.
It's obviously one of the very few things he cares about. It's a very fair point, and I would share that worry. However, I will say this. Once we get beyond these primary elections, for about a dozen to 2 dozen House Republicans, their concern becomes a general election, which is increasingly looking more difficult for them. So that's where I think they'll actually have the difficulty getting the vote.
I don't want to let you leave without asking you about your colleague from Pennsylvania, Senator John Fetterman. Are you concerned that he could potentially flip and become a Republican, and have you spoken to him about that?
I was afraid you were going to bring up the Knicks Sixers. So I'm more than happy to talk about Fetterman instead. You know, look, it's a realistic concern, I grant you. That said, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not going to spend every day worrying or obsessing over the allegedly Democratic senator from Pennsylvania.
All right. Well, we're going to bring you back
Allegedly
to
Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. I think that just gave us.
Are you going to run? Are you going to run against him?
I'm looking forward to being the next chairman of the House Budget Committee.
All right, great.
That wasn't a no.
Congressman Brendan Boyle, good to have you here on set with us.